I'd like to reemphasize the threat that our adversaries are exploiting via fentanyl and other illicit drugs that are entering our country through the border and poisoning millions of Americans nationwide. It's essential that all components of our national security apparatus are united in their efforts to protect the American people and our communities from such harm. Is there any reason to believe that the Mexican government isn't doing enough to finally eradicate the cartels and other transnational criminal organizations operating just over the border?
Congressman, I can only speak from my vantage point. As was stated previously by Director Ratcliffe, we have already been introduced to and begun collaborating with our counterparts in the Mexican government. Could there be more done? I would say absolutely yes. I know that the Trump administration across his cabinet are looking at opportunities to be able to do that.
And Director Patel just hit on this with CCP and precursors, but to what extent have we seen other malicious actors worldwide partner with the cartels to infiltrate and target the United States?
Related to the production of fentanyl.
Yes, ma'am.
India is one of those countries that is providing some of those precursor materials as well as equipment.
Thank you for being here today. My time's expired.
The gentleman yields. Mr. Quigley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I know it's all us who are worried about this only, but apparently the Senate Armed Services Committee Chair and Ranking Member requested Inspector General report on this chat. So I'll tell you why more people are worried about this than you might think, and that's Director Gabbard, your position was created post 9/11 because of the horrible intel failure that took place there, where we weren't sharing information. It wasn't adequately shared within the community and between our allies. We have to believe that our allies look at this as a colossal mistake and will at least hesitate to a certain extent, wanting to share sensitive information with us that keeps us safe because they're worried about their sources and methods as well. Wouldn't you be at least somewhat concerned that our allies would look at this and say that wasn't the perfect way to communicate?
Congressman, thank you for the question. If that information that was put out in the chat by the Secretary of Defense had included specific sources and methods and targets and names, then the answer would be yes, but that was not the case.
Let me stop you there because there's such a limited time. Generals, look, you're here because you got tough spots, so I have to put you on the spots. You're passing information like this just within your agency, and you know that it's going to include we are go for mission launch, Houthis, sea lanes, the information about the weapon systems. That gets to the Houthi military commanders. Doesn't it make you think they're at least going to say duck?
Thank you for the opportunity to weigh in on the issue. Yes, if we were collecting this on our adversaries and we're able to get this information as was asked of General Hawk earlier, we would consider that classified, but it's classified under the collection piece. The data that we're talking about here is the operational data, not the intelligence data.
Respectfully, sir, just because we have limited time.
Secretaries.
The Houthis military leader is going to duck when he hears this, or he's going to take some action, or he's going to try to shoot our planes down, right?
If he has actionable intelligence, he will certainly use
I'm talking about this intelligence. You don't think he can figure out? Houthis is mentioned a couple times, sea lanes. They show the weapon system. At least it's a credible warning to him.
I would offer the Houthis' defensive position has been constant since the 15th of March.
All right. General, I'll just take a whack at it. You're the Houthis' military leader. You get this information passed on to you. It doesn't make you at least take warning?
I would, Congressman, I think from the Houthis' perspective, they do have air defense equipment, and they would be able to detect aircraft when they're entered into the Red Sea, and certainly when we have our intelligence aircraft operating over top their country. They'd be able to detect that activity.
But being forewarned is extraordinarily important. I'll take another stab at it. If just language like this in a different context, okay? But just within your department, sir, your people are passing this information. Do you advise that maybe they don't use Signal on this? Are there other forms? Obviously, they're going to be more secure.
What I would offer is the data that we would be passing would be the full target packages and the full set of operational information. And that
Okay,
would
but
be
even if it
classified.
was just this, do you really want to give the possibilities that they could be breached, hacked, and they would get this information? Wouldn't you, even with just this, sir, respectfully, wouldn't you want to use a more secure means of communicating?
I think what I would offer are two things, and hopefully they're helpful to you. One of them would be, in addition to that full package that we would talk about, when the Secretary extracted individual details from that and provided those on Signal, whether individually or in aggregate, that is his decision of what is classified and what is not from an operational aspect. And that's probably the most important relevant piece to there, and I would echo what we've said before. It's the Secretary's authority for the
Just give me, there's more secure ways of communicating any of this, right?
There are, and our adversaries have
General, there are,
ways
right?
to intercept.
There's much more secure means that you use, even if you don't think that this is, or you don't want to stick your
What
head
I would
out
say
on
is
it.
the full packages were transmitted within classified, within traditional classified.
But this could have been transmitted in a classified way as well. Thank you.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Arkansas, the distinguished chair of the Financial Services Committee, Mr. Hill, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And let me say, Director Gabbard and Director Ratcliffe, it's so great to have you back in the Longworth House Office building. The food's the same, but you're welcome anytime. Director Ratcliffe, you know, we've served for 10 years together. I'm certainly aware of your extraordinary service at the DNI and here in Congress. And I just have a couple of follow-up questions on this topic of the Signal chat. Were there any war plans distributed in that Signal chat?
No, Congressman.
And were sources and methods that would compromise our intelligence system or your agents in the field around the world, were they discussed on the Signal chat?
No.
I appreciate that. I just think that's an important thing to have on the record. Director Patel, I co-chair the Americans Wrongfully Detained American Hostage Task Force here in the House, and I just in fact left Tigran Gambaryan, a former FBI official who I helped get out of prison in Nigeria last year. I just left him a few minutes ago. You've you know this issue very, very well, and President Trump's made such a commitment to bring Americans home. There's some 30 Americans still wrongfully detained or held hostage abroad. Is the FBI committing to work through its officials in our embassies around the world to bring those Americans home?
Thank you, Congressman. And as you know from my prior service in the prior administration, President Trump brought home over 50 hostages and detainees worldwide, and that effort is being redoubled now until every single American is home. And the FBI, from my perspective, has been given a directive that any wrongfully detained or captured person overseas is a priority to bring back.
We're so grateful to the President for making this a priority. We don't want our citizens that hold a blue passport to suddenly be a target in all their interactions around the world. That's wrong, and I'm glad President Trump's made it a priority. I look forward to working with you on that. Since November of 2023, I've been pursuing aggressively in this committee the U.S. government's policies and procedures for handling border encounters, specifically known or suspected terrorists. To quote former FBI directors, testimony before the Senate, they're blinking lights everywhere of concern. But despite my numerous attempts, including multiple briefing requests, letters, legislative provisions, a GAO report requested, the prior administration refused to provide requested information and data on what the public now knows was a very dangerous situation along the U.S. borders that President Trump now has as a priority of fixing. In January 2024, there were 176,000 encounters along the southern border, with 51,000 occurring at ports of entry and 124,000 between ports of entry. Comparing that to the work just in the first few weeks of the Trump administration, total encounters are down to 61,000 along the border, with 32 at ports of entry and 29,000 between ports of entry. For the record, that's a 60% reduction. Director Patel, since President Trump took office in January, as we've seen these plummeting border encounter numbers, has the country seen a drop in known or suspected terrorist encounters at the border?
Thank you, Congressman. It's one of the issues I really wanted to address today. And I think the country deserves to know that known or suspected terrorists, KSTs, are coming in with much less frequency at the southern border. In fact, if my information is correct, 2 since January 20th. And they are coming in with much greater frequency in the northern border. And since January 20th, that number is 34. And those metrics carry out over the last year in terms of ratio. So what it tells me is that known or suspected terrorists, the individuals that want to do the most harm to this country, are utilizing the northern border, and we got to refocus assets up there.
Yeah, which I think is good. And I'm glad the prior administration did declassify the ISIS arrests in Philadelphia and did declassify the citizen that was coming across the northern border to do harm on Election Day. That's good, but we have much more to do. And Director Gabbard, I need your help working with your colleagues here. It's this idea of requesting coordination between Director Patel, Secretary Noem, and the committee with fused data on known or suspected terrorists. Whether it's TSA data, BPP data, FBI internal data, we want to have that coming to us. Where are these people? What's been done with them? What is the government's position? Will you commit to work with us as OD&I to get this information from across the government, IC?
Absolutely, Congressman. And as you know, our National Counter-terrorism Center was really created to fulfill exactly that task, so that we're not dealing with multiple vetting systems that are coming up with different results, that we have this central vetting database to be able to identify those known or suspected terrorists who may be trying to come into our country, or who may be one of the tens of millions who illegally crossed into our border, may have come into our country during the last 4 years.
We look forward to working with you. Thank you for your answers, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields. Ms. Tinney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you so much to all of you. There's so many great questions that I have to ask, but I want to start with Director Patel, and I just want to first, before I get into a couple issues, thank you so much for your outstanding service and your recognition and focus on the northern border. My entire district is the northern border of New York with Canada. I just want to first jump into this issue for, Hamas attacked October 7th. The world watched in horror. Designated a foreign terrorist organization in 1997, killed over 1,200 civilians, and including American citizens, and many remain hostages. Only slightly less disturbing, we had a myriad of seemingly coordinated pro-Hamas demonstrations that have taken place all over the United States, in my state of New York, on college campuses, in Washington, D.C., universities. Director Patel, does the FBI have any open investigations into the organization, the leadership, and the funding of these pro-Hamas demonstrations with students such as, and groups such as Students for Justice in Palestine?
Thank you, ma'am. And I'm limited by what the Attorney General has already publicized, but as you know, there are open investigations based on what's been made public.
Okay. Has the FBI uncovered any evidence of foreign support for these Hamas demonstrations, including, other than Iran, any of these groups I might mention, like Students for Justice in Palestine, anything that's open source that we can talk about?
That's still ongoing.
Thank you. Director Gabbard, thank you so much for your service. It was great to serve with you in Congress as well, and works so much on wonderful veterans issues. My son's also a Marine major, and so we appreciate the service of everybody here. Let's keep in mind, obviously we're in open session. Do you have anything or ongoing intelligence to suggest there's foreign support from governments, non-government groups, and individuals that have helped these pro-Hamas demonstrations all across America, including on university campuses?
Congresswoman, there are some assessments that reflect that, and we can talk about that in the closed session.
Great, thank you so much. And now I want to get back to Cash, Director. Great work on the northern border. I'm one of the co-founders of the Northern Border Security Caucus, and your information has been tremendous. Once I got the district that I represent now, this sprawling, long district, the entire northern border is Canada. And as you say, 358 suspects on the terror watch list. Almost 90% of the suspects on the terror watch list are coming across our northern border. I'd love to talk to you. What is the FBI doing specifically dealing with this northern border? And what access point are you? Who are you working with? Is there a way that we have got a way to handle this with the foreign terror threats? And I say this in light of my district specifically, where New York State, led by Democrats, by the way, is notorious for their unwillingness to work with law enforcement. Under Governor Cuomo, we cut off the ability. I know Congressman Quigley talked about working together after 9/11. The state hit hardest by 9/11, and Governor Cuomo put in a law that prohibited law enforcement from working together in 2019. What are we doing so we can work with New York, the government and others, and to make sure that this doesn't happen across our New York northern border?
Well, one, and this is out of my lane, but what we need to be doing is working with the Canadian government because they sit on top of our northern border. We do have the problem of tyranny of distance and sheer geography as compared to the southern border, but when we were told that the Mexican government would not work with us, we overcame that hurdle, and we've seen the immediate results, as I highlighted to your colleague, about northern border contacts with KSTs versus the southern border. The other thing we can be doing is working across every northern border state who has a geographic border with Canada and their local and state affiliates, which we are doing at the FBI. But it is such a vast enterprise that we would need a huge increase in resources to cover down on that the way we do in Mexico.
Right. In addition, thank you for that. In addition with working with the Canadians, are you also working with the New York State government? Because we do have a number of interesting assets, a sprawling Akwesasne Mohawk Reservation that kind of goes across the northern border with New York and Canada. Are those types of things ways that you can work with the New York government and also in coordination with the Canadian Royal Police?
Absolutely, ma'am, and you highlight a great point. A lot of the northern border touches upon tribal lands, and we need to work with tribal leaders throughout the country as effectively as we do with state and local governments, and at the FBI we're doing just that.
Thank you so much, and I really appreciate all of your service, and I yield my time back.
Gentleman yields. Gentleman from Texas, Mr. Fallon's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. Director Patel, many of us had grown, increasingly alarmed at the sheer number of foreign nationals we're seeing caught spying on our critical infrastructure or, near sensitive sites in the country. One example is a Chinese national who's flying a drone, allegedly flying a drone over Vandenberg and taking pictures of the base. He was arrested in the San Francisco airport not that long after. Director Patel, would you agree that the two most dangerous nation states to our homeland and our interests are China and Russia?
Yes, Congressman.
So it would stand to reason that we should pay particular attention when foreign nationals from these two countries, who we've already established are the greatest threats to our country now and in the future, when they try to sneak into our country illegally.
Absolutely, sir.
Can you speak on the illegal migration we see from Russia and China and the differences that we saw from the first Trump administration to the Biden administration?
Well, one, the problem you have when you have an effective resolution to that set of issues is that the enemy adapts. And what they've done is utilize, as we were just discussing with your colleague, the northern border to shift their resources and affiliations to pour in known or suspected terrorists through the northern border. They haven't stopped through the southern border. They just know that we are setting up a pretty monumental effort down there to stop any known or suspected terrorists from entering the country. But the thing is, the Chinese, the Russians, Iranians, and other adversaries are utilizing their partners, just like they are doing in terms of how they move illicit fentanyl precursors into this country. They're moving humans in the same fashion, and we need to treat it as such.
Did you see an increase from the first Trump administration to the Biden administration on Russian and Chinese nationals crossing the border? Did it increase or decrease?
Yes, actually, so the PRC nationals crossing the southern border from 22 to 25 was 178,000. And I don't have the number for the northern border, sir, but I'll get that to you.
So, what we found was that there was actually a market increase, alarming, with the Chinese illegal migration increasing 527% all in, and Russian 2,400%. And if just 1/10 of 1%, some tiny fraction, 1/10 of 1% are actually asset sleeper agents loyal to Moscow or Beijing, they could wreak havoc and mayhem in a free and open society. It's very dangerous. And then those are the ones we know about. What about the ones that snuck across and we never found them? The unknown gotaways, if you will. So, Director Patel, there's also great concern about the increasing number of counterintelligence threats that are penetrating all levels and branches of government, both local, state, and federal. The number of elected and appointed officials willing to betray this country is becoming increasingly pervasive. Last year, we saw a former senior aide in the New York governor's office, Linda Sun, and her husband, Chris Hu,
indicted on charges of money laundering and acting as foreign agents to the People's Republic of China. Ms. Sun used her position to block Taiwanese representatives from access to New York State officials. Instead, we're rolling out the red carpet for those PRC officials to have those meetings. I mean, that's some scary stuff. So when we have someone like Sue Terry, who also worked covertly spying on Korea while working simultaneously with various think tanks, and she had been a national security official, and she'd worked for the CIA and the National Security Council. And because of her job, members of Congress and their staffs had access to these Korean intelligence officials, and she was paid with, thousands of dollars in luxury gifts. But Director Patel, I get that these investigations are ongoing and sensitive. But to the extent that you can, could you please briefly highlight the severity of these counterintelligence threats, including a rough estimate of the number of open counterintelligence cases that are pending?
We have many, and I'll get you the exact number, sir, in closed session. But what it highlights is that the enemy is not relenting. They're actually doubling down and tripling down on their efforts, and there's no sector in government that they won't go to and try to infiltrate and penetrate access and turn people in this country against our own nation. So that is a national security threat of our time, as is the terrorism threat and as is the fentanyl threat. It needs to be treated as such equally, and at the FBI we're doing that.
Thank you. And Director Patel, will you commit to providing this committee with classified briefing on the severity, the FBI processes and procedures, including defensive briefings related to counterintelligence threats involving elected and or appointed officials?
For defensive briefings, Congressman, I commit to you that the FBI will give you everything we have in our holdings. I can't comment on other people's.
Thank you. And Mr. Chairman, I want to thank all the witnesses for being here, particularly Mr. John Ratcliffe, Congressional District 4 as well. I yield back.
Gentleman yields. Just got notice that the baseball shooting report discussed by Vice Chairman Kelly earlier today has been delivered to our SCIF, and I appreciate, Director Patel, your responsiveness to that issue. Thank you so much for your commitment and the appropriate transparency demonstrated in that. We appreciate that very much. Since each member has had an opportunity to question our witnesses, I will now close this portion of the hearing, and we'll reconvene in closed session at 2 p.m. in the HIPSI spaces. I ask the public and staff to please remain seated until our witnesses depart. Thank you.
All right, so that hearing is adjourned. That was the annual threat assessment hearing involving the House Intel Committee. Obviously, lots of conversation happening there about the Signal debacle involving top administration officials. We'll, of course, be continuing to cover all of this throughout the day. But for now, let's get you back to the Charlie Kirk Show, which is already in progress.
This has been a live special report. We now join our programming already in progress.
To human nature. More importantly, they can show us that faith, family, and friends are worth fighting for. Maybe you read these books a long time ago in school. Maybe you've heard others talk about them.
Things too. I mean, people have asked, like, how do you do it when
American made and darn proud of it. The Charlie Kirk Show.
Okay, everybody, I want to tell you about Patriot Mobile. Then we have Speaker Newt Gingrich with us, the great Speaker Newt Gingrich. While we may have won this election, the fight to restore America is only beginning. As America's only Christian conservative wireless provider, Patriot Mobile offers a way to vote with your wallet without compromising on quality or convenience. Patriot Mobile isn't just about providing exceptional cell phone service. It's a call to action to defend our rights and freedoms. With Patriot Mobile, you get outstanding nationwide coverage because they operate on all three major networks. Go to patriotmobile.com/Charlie or call 972-PATRIOT. That is patriotmobile.com/Charlie, patriotmobile.com/Charlie or call 972-PATRIOT, patriotmobile.com/Charlie. Joining us now is Speaker Newt Gingrich. Mr. Speaker, thank you for taking the time. Mr. Speaker, how are you processing and thinking about this Signal story and the strange and bizarre development that the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic found himself in a private military group chat? Mr. Speaker.
Well, I mean, I think there are two different parts to that. One is, you said it just right, the strange and bizarre fact that of all the people who might have ended up in there, one of the most anti-Trump journalists from an anti-Trump magazine happened to be the guy there. I think that's so weird, you wouldn't have put it into a novel. The other fact is, they probably shouldn't have those kind of discussions on Signal. When I was Speaker, we routinely used the most powerful security systems. We had somebody who would come to me, wherever I was, carrying a secure phone so I could talk to the president on a line that the Chinese and the Russians couldn't possibly hack. So at one level, I would say there's an underlying lesson here that's important, and that is that they need to tighten up their own security provisions just in general, not because of the Atlantic Monthly, but because of the Chinese and the Russians and the North Koreans. All of them are very good at hacking into things. The other is, my advice to them is just get it over with. This is not an issue that helps Donald Trump at all to sit around and wallow in it. A mistake was made. We don't fully know why the mistake was made. The best thing they can say is, we're looking into it, and when we understand it, we'll report to you. But until then, we have nothing more to say, and just move on. What the left loves, they found something where they can pick at the Trump team and pick at the Trump team, and people will have different answers because they have different memories. They come from different places, and then each contradiction will become its own story. And the left would like to do nothing more than hide from the underlying realities of what Trump is doing to fundamentally get America back on track. And if they can find some story, any story, that lets them avoid covering the successful things, they're going to go there. So the best thing that the Trump team can do, in my judgment, is just shut up. Say, we understand it was a mistake. Clearly it was a mistake. We have an investigation underway. And when we know enough, we will report to you. But until then, we have nothing more to say. And just move on.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I do think, though, that privately there needs to be some understanding of how he ended up in this group chat. Either,
well, I mean, there should be a real investigation.
Yes.
Okay. They should assign somebody competent with whatever team they need to find out, one, why were they using Signal? Two, who put the chat together? Three, how did this particular person end up on the chat? And four, why did they have a procedure which didn't surface this person the minute they were on the chat? And all those things need to be done. But I think that's clearly important for the country and for the next 3.5 years of the Trump administration. But there's no point in trying to do that out in public until you know something. And frankly, it should be real. It should be serious. They shouldn't just cover it up. They should methodically, seriously understand what happened, share with the American people what they're going to do to fix it in the future, and move on. But wallowing in it and getting involved in who said what to who, and did you really put it on? Did your staff person put it on? How did it get there? That kind of stuff the media loves. It gives them something to talk about that doesn't help Trump. But first of all, the average American will get tired of it pretty quickly. And I think the things that Trump is doing and the things that the House and Senate Republicans are doing are so big, so historic, that we want to get back to communicating those.
So I completely agree. And this is probably the first hiccup or glitch of what has been a flawless 2 months.
That's right.
Speak about that, because the president is best on offense, not taking the terms of the media.
Right, and Trump understands this instinctively. That's why I said it was a glitch, and he was going back on offense. And then, unfortunately, several of his team went up and testified in the Hill and didn't quite have their act together. And I think that's where you want to have a single sentence or two sentence answer that basically explains why you're not explaining until you know what you're going to say, which they clearly don't currently know. But I mean, Trump has had an astonishing run. From everything we're seeing right now, he's likely to continue to have an astonishing run. And you look just at what they've done on the border. I mean, in my wildest days, I would never have thought you could control the border that quickly. And it was just literally overnight. Everything Biden had done collapsed. People around the world figured out they're not going to get in. Illegal immigration has literally collapsed. The amount of investments being announced in the United States are breathtaking. So you have a lot of good things happening. And frankly, the fight over the shape and structure of the federal bureaucracy is a fight that people know we have to have. In our project that you know about, Charlie, the America's New Majority Project, our polling last month indicated that 82% of the country think that Washington is corrupt, and they think that it makes it harder to solve things because it's corrupt. So if the president will go out there and be the advocate of honest, clear reform, and if that's the basic theme that Elon Musk and Doge take, they're going to have huge popular support for fixing this thing. And people are going to accept that there's going to be some turmoil, there's going to be some confusion, but that on balance, it's really a good thing.
And there is widespread popular support. I want to play a piece of tape here. We've played this prior in the week of Ezra Klein sitting down with David Shore from the New York Times. Ezra Klein is like the chief explainer of data for the left. A smart guy, but terribly wrong on the issues. And he's trying to understand, how is it, and this is, I would love to get your take on this, white men over 75 actually supported Kamala Harris at a significantly higher rate than white men who are 20 years old. This is a generational realignment that we're living through. Let's play cut 75, please.
One of the things you can see here is if you just look at 18-year-olds, 18-year-old women of color are the only of the four that actually, voted that Harris won. Trump narrowly won, non-white men.
So I do find this part of this chart shocking. I sometimes talk about narrative violations, and I think if we knew anything about Donald Trump 8 years ago, it's that young people did not like him. But if you look at this chart among white men who were 75 years old, supported Kamala Harris at a significantly higher rate than white men who are 20 years old.
That's exactly right.
That's a real shift.
It is a real shift. This is the thing I am the most shocked by, I think, in the last 4 years, is that young people have gone from being the most progressive generation since the baby boomers, and maybe in some ways more so, to becoming potentially the most conservative.
What is going on, Mr. Speaker?
Well, I mean, first of all, the left failed. You're a young person, you're out there, you're thinking, what can I do? Can I afford to buy a car? Can I afford to buy a house? Can I find a job? Do I think the future is going to get better? And under Biden and Harris, every signal to young people was that their lives were going to be poorer, more miserable, with fewer choices than their parents. And so at one level, they're saying this isn't working. Second, I think that there's a common sense when you get into some of the weirder issues, should men compete in women's sports, for example? I think there's a common sense view among younger Americans that this is just stupid. Why would you, in fact, even think that this makes any sense? And so they haven't been brainwashed enough to believe in things that aren't believable. And they're faced with a Bernie Sanders AOC Democratic Party, which is still moving to the left, despite all the election evidence and everything else we've seen. And I think that means that younger people, plus I think younger people have a deeper sense of how really corrupt and out of touch the government is, and that it really needs profound change.
And where the Democrat Party does not seem to want to moderate themselves. They seem to want to double and even triple down on their wildly unpopular views. I mean, Jasmine Crockett. Yeah, please go ahead.
I was going to say, I actually think there are two wings of the Democratic Party, and I think you're likely to see the beginning of sort of a civil war between those two wings. If you watch what happened with Schumer, the Senate Democratic leader, he finally decided as a practical matter that he didn't believe that Democrats ought to be the party that closed government. So from the standpoint of the left, he sold out. Now, he took about 10 senators with him, and they're now facing really angry crowds back home. And so what you have is the people who are trying to accommodate reality are being isolated from, if you look at the AOC Bernie Sanders roadshow, they're getting huge crowds. So the intensity of the hard left, which is doubling and tripling down, is growing, while the people in the middle who know that this is not going to work are finding themselves squeezed by the reality that the energy and the money and the drive in the Democratic Party is all on the hard left, and that if you try to be rational and moderate, you're almost certainly going to risk a primary campaign and may well get defeated in the primary because you'll be seen as a sellout. I mean, it's exactly what happened to the Republicans under Franklin Roosevelt in the 1930s, and that's part of why the New Deal became the dominant coalition for 90 years, because the Republicans just shattered and couldn't figure out what to do. And Trump has done everything right to be a coalition builder in the tradition of Jefferson and Lincoln and Roosevelt. And he continues to both deliver things people want and to define his opponents and to set up the kind of fights where his opponents rush in to just be mildly crazy. And you started to mention the woman who I hope they're going to censure this week because as a congresswoman, she has said things.
Jasmine Davy Crockett. Yep, that's right.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the things she's been saying are so vicious. And we do have this problem right now that you have a very substantial militant group on the left who are willing to burn cars, firebomb dealerships, talk about getting Elon Musk, talk about other kind of things that involve violence. I mean, the real threat to violence in America right now is from bitter left-wing extremists who just can't cope with what's happening.
Mr. Speaker, I'd love to keep you for another segment if we can, if you have another couple minutes. Great.
For
Thank you.
For you, of course.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Greatly appreciated. Our audience loves you. We all know how challenging it can be to get the quality sleep we need. Whether it's falling asleep or staying asleep, so many people are not getting the sleep or the Z's that you need. Z Factor from Relief Factor has the formula to help change that. Z Factor goes beyond melatonin and uses a combination of 4 natural ingredients. Z Factor is 100% drug-free, so it's safe to take regularly. Call 1-800-4RELIEF. That is 1-800-4RELIEF, or visit relieffactor.com. That is relieffactor.com. Call 1-800-4RELIEF to get the sleep that you need, better sleep without drugs. See how Z Factor can get you the Z's that you want. Go to Z Factor. That is relieffactor.com, relieffactor.com. Email us, freedom@charliekirk.com. We'll be right back, everybody.
listening to The Future of America, and the future is bright. Here is Charlie Kirk.
Okay, everybody. Mr. Speaker, we have about a minute in just this segment. Please plug your upcoming projects or the way that our audience can support you, please.
Well, listen, the biggest project we've got is the America's New Majority Project, which they can see at that title. And then I have a new book coming out this summer called Trump's Triumph, which lays out both how he won, but also what it means for the future of America and the great things we can accomplish. And as always, Charlie, it's great to be with you. You were a major factor in the victory last year, and you're going to be a major factor in winning this cultural fight over the future of America.
Well, thank you. I deeply appreciate that, and we appreciate it. And that is the most important thing we're focusing on, is the cultural fight. We've seen a movement with young people, and if we can give some permanency to that, boy, things are not going to be very hopeful for the Democrat Party.
It would change America.
Everything. That's right. It would change it
It'll
fundamentally.
change America, and then that'll change the world.
That's right. And we would not do a fundamental transformation. We'd get us back to our roots, not the Obama transformation. Stay right there. We'll be right back. Okay, everybody, welcome back. Email us freedom@charliekirk.com. So, Mr. Speaker, I don't have the tape handy, but I will do my best to paraphrase it. President Trump actually won immigrants. That's right, immigrant voters in the battleground states, something that completely blows the mind of Democrat strategists. How do you explain that Donald Trump, who's been positioned as anti-immigrant and xenophobic and all that, won the immigrant vote in the 7 battleground states, Mr. Speaker?
Well, you know, Callista and I did a documentary that was on PBS called Journey to America. And we took 9 people who came here legally and who made America a better country. Because we want to make the point that while we're against illegal immigration, that legal immigration often makes America stronger. I think everybody I talk to who's a legal immigrant is really angry at the idea that people just plain broke the law.
That's right.
They didn't wait in line. They didn't obey the rules. They are, in effect, in their minds, illegitimate. And they don't want that rewarded. Furthermore, a lot of people who came here from countries that have dangerous gangs, like Venezuela and El Salvador, really don't want the gangs here. That's part of why they were attracted to America. So I think the left has always misunderstood the nature of legal immigration in America and the fact that, for example, when you deal with most Latinos, you're dealing with people who are very often devout Christians or Catholics or Pentecostals or fundamentalists, but very, very Christian, believe in very traditional values. You go talk to them about having boys engaged in girls' sports, they think you're just nuts. You go talk to them about the importance of welfare. They think you're crazy. They think people should work. And we've done a ton of polling at the America's New Majority Project. And every time we poll it, people believe that everybody who gets money from the federal government should work. And that unless you have a severe disability, and they believe that people who are able-bodied and take money without working are committing fraud. So nobody on the left understands these things. That's why Trump going to McDonald's was an act of genius, because 87% of Americans go to McDonald's every year. 40 million people have worked at McDonald's, including Jeff Bezos. And on the left, of course, they used to say, you don't want to take some hamburger flipping job. And of course, on the left, they don't serve Chablis at McDonald's. They don't serve French food. It's a hard experience. So Trump understood where the American people were. Nobody on the hard left has a clue where the American people are. And they have a kind of an elite snobbishness that just puts them totally out of sync with the American people.
If you were to develop a battle plan for the Republican caucus for this midterm election, what would that be? Midterms are goofy. You've had a lot of success in midterm cycles before. How would you develop the messaging and the strategy coming into 2026?
I would say 3 things. 1, work as a team. You're now the governing party, so you have to work together. You have to find good reasons to vote yes. When you're the opposition party, you find good reasons to vote no. Well, that ain't your role now. Your role is to be a team to work together. That's number one. Number two, you have to pass the tax cut bill and the deregulation bill ideally by May, no later than mid-June, because it has to be in effect in time for the economy next year to be taking off and for people to say, you know, Trump's delivered, I feel better, I have more money in my pocket, I want to keep it going. And three, I think the key issue next year is going to be a very simple question. Is it working? If they decide it is working, and certainly we have right now one of the highest right track numbers on polling that we've seen in decades. If they decide this is all working, they're going to reelect the Republicans. The Democrats are going to shrink to being a tiny minority. And we have a real chance, I think, to make America great again and to create that golden age that Trump has talked about.
Very well said. Mr. Speaker, thank you. And just remind our audience of the website, the way that they can support you.
Well, they can find everything I do. 3 podcasts that are free, 3 newsletters, books and things at gingrich360.com.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for your time.
Thanks.
God bless you. Thank you.
Be with you.
Okay, email us freedom@charliekirk.com. Tonight, I will be going to Pastor Jack Hibbs' church, Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills. I'll also be joining the Jordan Peterson podcast today for a couple of hours, so that is a great honor. In addition, next week, we'll be going to Stillwater, Oklahoma, at Oklahoma State University. That's a fun little curveball. We had a different campus cancel on us, so we decided to kind of go to home country. It's my first outdoor campus event. It's actually my first ever campus event in the state of Oklahoma. I think we're going to have a big crowd in Stillwater. I'm told those are some good folks out there. Email us freedom@charliekirk.com. Subscribe to our podcast. Coming up next hour, we have Sean Spicer and Connor Baylock. I'm going to play around with this idea a little bit further. Was Signal compromised? Is this potentially an intel operation? I still give that a low probability, but I'm not dismissing it entirely. Second hour coming up.
tried to shut them up.
There's no guarantee to free speech.
They tried to cancel them.
Deplatforming works.
They even threw them in jail.
Peter Navarro,
Steve Bannon,
now in prison.
But they couldn't stop them.
There's not a prison bill that will ever shut me up.
They call them rebels.
Basket of deplorables.
They call them rogues.
They claim to values or religion.
And they say they're outlaws.
These are the kind of guys you like to smack in the ass.
War Room presents Rebels, Rogues, and Outlaws.
You set out to take Vienna. Take Vienna!
The national bestseller by longtime Bannon producer Dan Fluette. Take a journey through the pictorial history of War Room in a culture that celebrates the weak. Show your support by standing with the rebels. Go to doitfluette.com or scan the QR code on your screen. Use the code RAV20 for 20% off your order. Stand with the rebels and never back down.
To this Real America's Voice news break, I'm Terrence Bates. We've recently talked a lot about home title theft. In short, thieves are pretty much stealing people's homes from right underneath them. In many cases, the victims don't even know their home or their title information has been compromised until it's way too late. Well, this morning, we're helping you protect yourself. Investigative journalist John Summer joins me now to introduce you to Home Title Lock. John, always good to see you. Good morning.
Great to see you again, Terrence, too. Good to see you.
Before we get into Home Title Lock, let's talk about this disturbing trend of home title theft because it's something that's so insidious and it happens without someone even being on site to steal something. And as I mentioned in the intro, oftentimes you don't even know about it until it's way too late.
You're exactly right. And let me give you an example. By the way, the term has varied from title theft to deed theft to the FBI used to call it home stealing. But my new favorite term is title pirates. And actually, this was a term that was just used in an article in, of all places, House Beautiful magazine. So, Terrence, now you know that it's kind of gone mainstream as far as being aware of this crime. But I love the term title pirates because it's very descriptive, because the way that this works is the thief basically comes out of the fog. They steal, like marauders, and they steal the title to your home. They ransack it for its value, and then they go back into the fog. And you wake up and you will never know that you've been hit until way too late when the loan company or whoever comes calling and says you haven't made payments on a loan that you never took out because you didn't know the title to your property. Doesn't have to be a home. It could be a piece of land. It could be an Airbnb, a cabin in the woods. Anything that has a title number attached to it can be stolen and then leveraged for the equity or the value in that property.
So say someone is victimized in this sort of way. What kind of recompense do they have? How do they go about, first of all, getting their name and getting their title back, but then beyond that, potentially prosecuting the person that's responsible for the theft in the first place, when I suspect it's probably fairly difficult to find the person responsible?
Yeah, that's the really tough part, Terrence, because you have to hire an attorney. You know how expensive that can be. Then you have to go through the court system, and that can take months, if not years, to be able to rectify, to prove that you are the rightful owner to that home. And recently, high-profile law enforcement departments have actually recognized this as a crime because it's so stealth. I mean, traditionally, crimes were you get hit over the head and they steal your watch or break into your home or whatever. This is a very stealth crime, but it's one thing to call something a crime, Terrence. It's another to be able to catch the criminal. And usually when this crime occurs, they're long gone, and you find yourself holding the bag.
Is there a move nationally or even in some states to help protect people from being victimized in this way? Because at the foundation, at its roots, this is a crime that starts with a public record.
Yes, exactly. And those public records are, as you say, very public, because with the internet and with artificial intelligence, you can find out anything about anybody right now. You can then duplicate the proper documents to fake that you are that person, and then transfer the title, or take more than likely people aren't going to sell the property. They don't want the house. What they want is the value, Terrence, and then they can take one or multiple loans out on it. And by the time that all transpires, they're gone, and you don't even know about it until the loan company comes and said, hey, you took out this equity loan. No, I didn't. Well, it says here on paper you did. It is so easy to do, and the only way to stop it is to monitor your title, and nobody can do that. It's just simply impractical to do it 24/7. But there are some companies, and one in particular, and I've researched them all, Terrence, a company called Home Title Lock. And what they do are three things. They call it the $1 million triple lock protection.
Okay.
They will monitor your title 24/7. You can't possibly do that.
Right.
They will alert you if there's something fishy going on.
And we can get information about that there on our screen. I'm sorry to cut you off, but HometitleLock.com, that's the website. You can get more information about all of that there.
Okay, everybody, welcome back. Email us, freedom@charliekirk.com, and subscribe to our podcast. Joining us now is Sean Spicer, host of the Sean Spicer Show. Great man and great American. Sean, welcome to the program. Sean, what is your take on this entire Signal chat story? I use Signal a lot. You've used Signal a lot. Something here does not add up. Either Mike Waltz is totally lying, or Signal was compromised by the CIA. One or the other. Which is it?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, keep in mind, so there's a few things to this story that need to be taken care of, because the media and the Democrats are taking this and blowing everything up and using terms that, frankly, with all due respect, they have no right, I mean, they have no understanding of. When they throw out words like war plan, classified, those might be words to them, but they actually have meaning, right? So there are operational plans, we call them O plans. They're sensitive, classified, or confidential, secret, top secret. The first thing that we got to get out of the way is that clearly, from what John Radcliffe, the CIA director, said yesterday, Signal is an authorized platform. The second issue is what was being discussed. Was it classified or not? I trust the folks, you know, the CIA director, the DNI director, to determine that more than a bunch of lefty media types that have no experience in this. And then the third thing is what you're talking about, Charlie, which is how does Jeffrey Goldberg get into this chat? Now, Mike Waltz, as you said, or alluded to, he's admitted. He went on Laura Ingraham last night and said, I'm the guy who created this group chat. But how did he get in his phone book, right? And that's where I think the big issue is that Waltz said last night, I don't know. Now, here's the deal. when I first met Jeffrey Goldberg, I called to yell at him in the 2016-2017 transition because his publication had this gadfly, horrible person named Julia Offie who wrote a disgusting and despicable story about Ivanka Trump. And I called to yell at him and said, hey, I know we've never met. Blah, 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 blah. So he's in my phone. So I went to Signal and I said, okay, let me kind of recreate this. How would he? Signal imports all of your contacts that are in your phone to the thing. So one has to assume either Mike Waltz, and by the way, Jeffrey Goldberg admits that he's only met Waltz maybe once, maybe twice several years ago. And that's Washington for you. Hey, I was at an event, we were at a forum, we crossed paths. But how did his number end up in his phone book? Because Waltz says, I don't know, I've never talked to him. That's the question that I think is important here, because there's a lot of theories. Like, you think about this, the U.S. trade rep is Jamison Greer, JG. So if you're looking down initials in your phone book, you mistakenly get the wrong JG, not Jeffrey Goldberg, Jamison Greer, bring him in. Okay, but how did he end up in the phone book in the first place, in his list of contacts? And that's where I think the Waltz team is saying, hey, we're asking the tech folks to look at this, because you're right. At some point, this is going to come out. Right? It's, did you personally add him in or did somebody else do it? But there's only two ways that can happen.
Right. And so other than that, or something even more nefarious happened, like the intel agencies hacked this group chat, which is a very low probability. But let's just play some of the statements from Mike Waltz, his denials. I mean, outright denials, saying that Waltz claims a staffer did not put his contact in. Let's play cut 232.
So your staffer did not put his contact information.
No,
but how did it end up in your phone?
That's what we're trying to figure out.
Okay, but that's a pretty big problem.
That's what we've got the best technical minds, right?
That's disturbing.
And that's where, I mean, I'm sure everybody out there has had a contact where it was said one person and then a different phone number.
But you've never talked to him before, so how's the number on your phone? I mean, I'm not an expert in any of this, but it's just curious. How's the number on your phone?
Well, if you have somebody else's contact and then somehow it gets
someone
sucked
sent
in,
you that
it gets
contact.
sucked in.
Was there someone else supposed to be on the chat that wasn't on the chat that you thought was on the chat?
So the person that I thought was on there was never on there. It was this
Who
guy.
Was that? What person?
Well, I'm not. Look, okay. Laura, I take responsibility. I built the group.
I mean, I'm sorry, Sean, getting sucked in. I use Signal all the time. I have no idea what he's talking about here.
Well, that's why I thought what was weird is that, like, so I get that, like, that so what he's alluding to is I have Charlie Kirk in my phone, but gosh, instead of Charlie Kirk's phone number, I have, Bob Smith. And so I'm texting you, and that seems to be what he was saying. Well, I don't get that, right? In other words, what he was saying is, and again, I'm just speculating, but JG, Jamison Greer, the U.S. trade rep, that would make sense. Okay, so what he seems to be saying is, I thought I was adding somebody to the text, and it turns out that it was Jeffrey Goldberg's number, right? And my point is, okay, that still doesn't, you still have, like, no one goes, like, that's just, it doesn't make sense. I buy the fact that, hey, as a member of Congress, maybe his staff said, hey, we're going to upload some reporters to your phone so you can contact them before he assumed the direct. I could buy that. Like, I didn't put him in. My staff used to program my phone. Okay. But the idea that you thought you were contacting somebody else and their numbers were just transposed, I've never had that happen, right? I mean, that to me... and also, just like, let's face it, Jamison Greer just happens to have a one-off phone number than Jeffrey Goldberg. This is where I hope he does get the best technical minds to look at this.
Right. And so the other thing about Signal, if you and I were to talk on Signal a lot, Sean, and then I went to go create a new message.
We're interrupting this program for a special live report.
The latest press briefing at the White House is just getting underway now. Caroline Levitt is at the podium. Let's listen in.
Electric pledged to invest more than $700 million in the United States to boost American energy infrastructure and AI. On Monday, Hyundai announced a $20 billion investment in the United States, including $5.8 billion for a new steel plant in Louisiana, which will create nearly 1,500 high-paying jobs. President Trump is truly turning America back into a manufacturing superpower. Yesterday, President Trump marked National Medal of Honor Day by meeting with 21 of our nation's bravest heroes and incredible patriots who have been awarded the highest military honor. Beautiful picture. The president also signed a historic executive order to protect the integrity of American elections by strengthening voter citizenship verification and banning foreign nationals from interfering in U.S. elections. These are the common sense solutions that only Democrats could oppose. But voters deserve elections they can trust, and critical confidence is being restored thanks to President Trump's leadership. Later this afternoon in the East Room, President Trump will mark Women's History Month by honoring the exceptional women around our country, including the highly talented women in his administration and his cabinet. And on an additional scheduling update, the president will hold a press conference in the Oval Office today at 4:00 p.m. to announce tariffs on the auto industry, and I will leave that to him to make that announcement later. Unfortunately, all of this good is happening for our country. This administration is working hard on behalf of the American public every day, but the mainstream media continues to be focused on a sensationalized story from the failing Atlantic magazine that is falling apart by the hour. Here are the facts. The National Security Advisor has taken responsibility for this matter, and the National Security Council immediately said, alongside the White House counsel's office, that they are looking into how a reporter's number was inadvertently added to this messaging thread. We have said all along that no classified material was sent on this messaging thread. There were no locations, no sources, or methods revealed, and there were certainly no war plans discussed. The Atlantic has even admitted this themselves. Their release of these internal messages validates the truth, which we have been saying all along. If this story proves anything, it proves that Democrats and their propagandists in the mainstream media know how to fabricate, orchestrate, and disseminate a misinformation campaign quite well. And there's arguably no one in the media who loves manufacturing and pushing hoaxes more than Jeffrey Goldberg. Goldberg is an anti-Trump hater. He is a registered Democrat. Goldberg's wife is also a registered Democrat and a big Democrat donor who used to work under who? Hillary Clinton. This is the same Jeffrey Goldberg who infamously lied about weapons of mass destruction to get us into the Iraq War, which cost trillions of dollars and thousands of American soldiers. And how else has Goldberg discredited himself? By absurdly claiming that President Trump was Vladimir Putin during the 2016 campaign, by peddling the Russia, Russia, Russia hoax that tried to hijack President Trump's first term, by inventing the suckers and losers hoax to help Joe Biden in the 2020 election, by peddling a hoax about President Trump involving Gold Star families to help Kamala Harris in the 2024 election, which our campaign at the time vigorously denied. Jeffrey Goldberg didn't care. There's more, but we don't have all day, and we can now add this signal hoax to this very long list. The real story here is the overwhelming success of President Trump's decisive military action against Houthi terrorists. On March 15th, President Trump ordered a series of military operations against the terrorist Houthis to defend U.S. shipping assets in the Red Sea, restore freedom of navigation for international shipping, and defend the United States from enemy threats. United States forces successfully struck dozens of targets across Houthi-controlled territory. And as a result of these actions, several Houthi leaders were killed, including the Houthi drone chief, his deputy, and several of their drone experts and other key leaders. We also destroyed command and controlled facilities, weapons manufacturing facilities, and advanced weapons storage locations. And it's important to remember why this powerful action took place in the first place. Because of Joe Biden's incompetence and pathetic weakness on the world stage for years, the Houthi terrorists grew emboldened. Immediately after taking office in 2021, Joe Biden removed the Iran-backed Houthis from the foreign terrorist organization and specifically designated global terrorist list. Did anybody in this room ask the Biden administration at the time why they made such a stupid mistake? This reckless action undid the designation put in place by President Trump during his first term, and what followed was predictable and devastating. The Houthis targeted U.S. military ships and aircraft, hit commercial ships, including U.S.-flagged vessels, threatened our personnel overseas, and attacked our allies in the region. This resulted in more than a year of U.S.-flagged commercial ships being prevented from safely sailing through the Suez Canal, the Red Sea, and the Gulf of Aden. This had a massive negative impact on global trade of the economic security of the United States. Joe Biden was the commander-in-chief, and he sat on his hands while the United States of America was bullied and embarrassed by terrorists. President Trump and his team are putting a stop to these threats in restoring American strength around the world. The Trump peace through strength approach means no terrorist force will stop American commercial and naval vessels from freely sailing the waterways of the world. But unfortunately, this is not what the Democrats and the media want to talk about. They are focused on a coordinated campaign to try and sow chaos in this White House. And this has been the most successful first 2 months of any administration ever, which is exactly why they are doing this. We are not going to bend in the face of this insincere outrage. And here's just one example of how bad faith the Democrats' criticisms are. Democrat Senator Mark Warner is hysterical over the use of Signal, which is an approved decrypted app, and the killing of Houthi terrorists. But Senator Warner himself used Signal to work with a lobbyist for a Russian oligarch to connect with the disgraced Steele dossier author who started the Russia hoax, which Jeffrey Goldberg later reported on. How ironic. We're not going to lose focus of the bottom line, which is that Joe Biden's weakness enabled and emboldened Houthi terrorists, and President Trump's strength and resolve eliminated those terrorists. Here in our new media seat today, we have Lindsay Keith. She is the managing editor for Merit TV and serves as their White House correspondent. Merit TV launched 1 year ago and creates and distributes content across diverse platforms. We're glad to have you with us, Lindsay. Please kick us off.
Thank you, Caroline. I appreciate it and this opportunity for Merit TV. 2 questions, if I may. One on Signal, one on the economy.
Sure.
On Signal, how comfortable is the president with what was shared so far now that the chain has been released?
The president's view on all of this remains the same today as it did yesterday. And I think it speaks volumes about the leadership of this president that he went directly to all of you, members of the press corps. He was asked, do you want someone else to go out and do a briefing? And he said, no, I will tackle this story. I will discuss it. The people need to hear from me about the situation. And so his thoughts on this remained the same today. He has placed great trust in his national security team. And as for the usage of Signal, as the president said yesterday, as the CIA director has testified under oath, this is an approved app. It's an encrypted app. The Department of Defense, the Department of State, the CIA has it loaded onto government phones because it is the most secure and efficient way to communicate. As for, again, the original situation in this messaging thread, the National Security Council, the White House counsel's office continues to look in to how this mistake, which the National Security Advisor has owned, occurred, and the president has ensured they are doing that.
On the economy, consumer confidence hit a 4-year low this month. Can you help explain to the American people how tariffs will help them in the long run?
Yeah, absolutely, and I'm grateful for the question. The American public will hear later this afternoon from the president directly on the topic of tariffs. And as you all know, April 2nd day, President Trump has proudly dubbed it Liberation Day for our country. What he means by that is it will be a day where the United States of America will no longer be ripped off by nations around this world. It will be a day where Americans finally see free and fair trade practices restored. We are no longer going to allow our allies, our competitors, and our adversaries to take advantage of American workers. And if you think about your hometown in the state that you grew up, Main Street looks a lot different today than it did many years ago. And President Trump wants to restore America as a manufacturing superpower around the globe. He wants products to be made right here in our great country with great, hardworking American hands that will ultimately result in higher wages and more money in the pockets of the American people. And he's also, in addition to tariffs, also determined to pass tax cuts later this year, as he did successfully in his first term, to put even more money back into the pockets of hardworking Americans. Peter.
Caroline, if I can ask you very quickly about the information we've seen, just to set the predicate to all this. Has the president been briefed and physically seen he's seen all the details of the chat as printed by the Atlantic?
I just spoke to the president about it, yes.
Okay. Then let me ask you, if I can, very quickly. In the chat, Pete Hegseth, the defense secretary, details F-18s, Tomahawks, so some of the weapons that were used. He details the timing involved for this, all of which occurred 31 minutes before, as he says, F-18s would launch. The DoD manual details classified information as significant military plans, saying that is secret, that's classified. So what about There are no methods, there are no sources, but that's not what determines what's classified. So what is it about what Pete Hegseth wrote that makes you say this is not classified?
Well, it's not just me saying that, Peter. It's the Secretary of Defense himself who is saying this as well. And he put out a very strong statement earlier today listing all of the things that were not included in that message that he sent to the group. And again, this message, there was no classified information transmitted. There were no war plans discussed. Why did The Atlantic downgrade their allegation about war plans to attack plans? They're now playing word games because they know this was sensationalist spin from a reporter who is well known for doing this. We have said all along no war plans were discussed, no classified material was sent. You have the Secretary of Defense saying that. You have the Director of the CIA, the Director of National Intelligence, the FBI Director, all testifying to that under oath, and they should be trusted with that.
To be clear, Americans can make the decision for themselves, but whether you said it's not war plans. Would you characterize these as military plans, military operation plans?
I would characterize this messaging thread as a policy discussion, a sensitive policy discussion, surely, amongst high-level cabinet officials and senior staff. And I'm so glad, Peter, that you said the American public can decide for themselves, because I think the American public should decide for themselves based on the outcome of this operation. And what happened in this operation? Terrorists that were allowed to run wild by the Biden administration were killed because of the direction and the determination of this president and his team. And this message also shows, this messaging thread also proved that President Trump has an incredibly dynamic team who is working incredibly hard, flying all over the world to secure world peace and to fix up the foreign policy crises that the previous administration left for this team to inherit.
So to be clear, we all in this room and around the country would agree that we're glad no American service members were harmed, and we're glad that the mission was a success. We'll stipulate that. But the president said that Pete Hegseth said none of this was classified. So given the president has seen it now, and given the president understands that significant military plans are deemed classified as secret, how does the president view none of this, which details times and weapons and more, as being not classified?
I've already been asked and answered this question. The president's thoughts on this remain the same today as they were yesterday, as well as the Secretary of Defense. This question has been asked and answered. There was no classified material discussed. Jackie.
On what basis I was asking?
Go ahead, Jackie.
Thank you, Caroline. So why aren't launch times on a mission strike classified?
Again, I would defer you to the Secretary of Defense's statement he put out this morning. There were various reasons he listed things that were not included in that messaging thread that were not classified. And again, going back to the American public, do you trust the Secretary of Defense, who was nominated for this role, voted by the United States Senate into this role, who has served in combat, honorably served our nation in uniform? Or do you trust Jeffrey Goldberg, who is a registered Democrat and an anti-Trump sensationalist reporter? This president and this national security team are putting our national security and the American people first. We are restoring American strength around the world, and the results of this operation speak for themselves.
Putting aside Jeffrey Goldberg, though, just for American service members who are going to have to carry out these missions in the future, what I guess the message that's coming from the response to all this that we're hearing is that nothing sensitive happened. And I guess the logical conclusion of that is that if these messages had gone out publicly prior to the launch, that wouldn't have been a risk to service members. I don't know that they're comfortable with that. So can you explain, had these messages been published, would the plans have moved forward? Would the launch have still taken off?
What I can tell you is that the president, as the commander-in-chief of our United States Armed Forces, and Secretary Pete Hegseth, who is an incredible man and a warfighter himself, take the lives of our American service members with the utmost responsibility, and they would never do anything intentionally to put their lives at risk. And again, they are working hard on that every single day, and we are protecting our service members while also restoring peace throughout this globe. It's something the previous administration has not done. And I would just add one more point. We are not going to be lectured about national security and American troops by Democrats and the mainstream media who turn the other cheek when the Biden administration, because of their incompetence, left 13 service members dead in Afghanistan, and not a single person in the previous administration was held accountable for that botched withdrawal. Joe Biden said, in fact, it was a great operation. That is despicable. It's unacceptable to this president and this Secretary of Defense. The National Security Advisor has taken responsibility for this inadvertent number being added to the messaging thread. But above all, we take the lives of our troops, safety, security, prosperity around the globe with the utmost seriousness.
Goldberg's intentions, do you believe
Jennifer,
that he
go
would
ahead.
release that to embarrass the administration ahead of the worldwide threats?
Jennifer, go ahead.
Given what you've said about the president's trust in his national security team, can you say definitively that no one will lose their jobs? No one will lose their job at all because of this signal situation?
What I can say definitively is what I just spoke to the president about, and he continues to have confidence in his national security team.
Caroline, one more. Can I ask one more, Karen? On the targets in Yemen on March 15th, can you say were 100% of the targets that were planned for March 15th, were they all destroyed? Because that would be an indication if some of them were moved but they were not all hit, that maybe perhaps some of the enemies were able to get some of the information in that signal.
What I can say about the operation is what the Department of Defense has put out there. I would refer to them for any further operational details. But there have been more than 100 strikes conducted against Houthi targets, and they have hit key Houthi leaders, air defense systems, command and control nodes, headquarters, weapons manufacturing and storage facilities, and these operations will continue until the freedom of navigation in our seas is restored and U.S. shipping can safely transmit without the fear of attack. And again, we believe that this has been a very successful operation thus far, and it will continue until this administration feels it no longer has to, and these terrorists have been taken out, which again is something the previous administration should have done, but they didn't, and now we've inherited this crisis. Stephen.
Thank you, Caroline. I'd like to clarify something about the investigation and also ask about some conservative commentary. On the investigation, Mike Waltz said last night that he had spoken to Elon Musk about figuring out how Jeffrey Goldberg's number got in his phone. You mentioned the NSC and the White House counsel's office investigating. Can you just clarify who is investigating, who's leading that, and also Dave Portnoy, who endorsed President Trump, said today that he thinks that Mike Waltz should leave. Could you respond to that?
Sure. Great respect for Dave Portnoy, but I just answered that previous question from Jennifer. As for your original question about who's looking into the messaging thread, the National Security Council, the White House counsel's office, and also, yes, Elon Musk's team. Elon Musk has offered to put his technical experts on this to figure out how this number was inadvertently added to the chat. Again, to take responsibility and ensure this can never happen again.
Caroline, I have two questions. One on a follow-up on something you just said, but since we have these messages released and you said that the president has now personally reviewed them, at the chat at one point Pete Hegseth wrote 14-15 strike drones on target, and in all caps he said, this is when the first bombs will definitely drop. Does the president feel that he was misled by his national security advisors, whoever it was that told him there was no classified information in there, now that he's seen these messages?
I've now been asked and answered this question 3 times by the both of you, and I've given you my answer. The president feels the same today as he did yesterday.
Okay.
Philip.
On my follow-up on what you had just said.
No, go ahead, Philip. Caitlin, I'm not taking your follow-up. Philip, go ahead.
I have a follow-up on something you just said, though, Caroline. That's
Caitlin, I'm not taking your follow-up. Philip, go ahead. I have called on you.
The vice president seemed to express some frustration that Europe wasn't doing more to police waterways in their backyard, noting in that signal thread that 40% of European trade goes through the Suez Canal. Does the president share that opinion and frustration? And then going forward, should the Europeans be responsible for policing that waterway?
Well, the president was asked this question yesterday by the pool in the cabinet room, and he answered this question. He said yes, he believes that Europe has been, as the vice president put it, freeloading on the backs of American taxpayers and off the backs of the United States of America, and he wants to ensure that Europe pays their fair share. He's always been very honest and upfront about that, and I think the vice president shares those concerns with him as well.
And then one more.
Sure.
Enlisted soldiers, sailors, and Marines would face consequences if they shared this type of information inadvertently. with a reporter. Can you tell us more why the president is so willing to give Mike Waltz a mulligan here?
Again, I have now been asked and answered the same question using different language multiple times. If anybody has another question, there's a lot of different things going on in the world. We have tariffs possibly being implemented later today. The president is going to talk about that at 4 o'clock this afternoon. Sure, go ahead.
Okay, thank you for taking my question. I wanted to first and foremost thank the administration for the election integrity executive order, because so many journalists for 4 years were banned from talking about this very subject. So thank you to the administration for that. My question is, yesterday President Trump, when signing the order, said that there is more to come when it comes to election integrity. Would that include same-day voting and hand-counted paper ballots? And why are Democrats so against election integrity measures like obviously proof of citizenship when it comes to voting in a United States election?
Well, it's a very good question. You'll have to ask the Democrats why they're against so many common sense things, not just mandating voter ID. Why are they against men and women's sports? Why are they against deporting foreign terrorists from American soil who have been designated a foreign terrorist organization? I'm referring to Tren de Aragua. As for the election integrity executive order that the president signed yesterday, this is in an effort to restore trust in American elections. There were more than 10 steps taken, 10 executive actions taken throughout this one order. It directs the department, or the attorney general rather, in Homeland Security to prevent non-citizens from any involvement in administering elections. There's also another host of actions. We can provide the fact sheet for you, but it's a very strong election integrity executive order, and the president would also like to see Congress do something about this very important issue as well. Sure, go ahead.
Caroline, the Republicans and Democrats alike have been expressing some concern about the frequency with which senior Trump officials have been using the Signal app. Has there been discussion, or will there be a review about how often they use Signal, and if you could explain to us how they might be considering other applications to get away from something like this happening again?
Sure. Well, again, first of all, Signal has been an approved app for government use. It's an encrypted app, and as I said, it's the most safe and efficient way of communicating, especially when people can't be in a skiff or inside a room physically together. I think, as the president said yesterday, he wishes that everybody could be in the room, and it's our goal to ensure that everybody can be. But again, no classified information was discussed in this chat, and any time classified information is discussed amongst high-level officials across this administration, secure lines of communication are used, including, by the way, our special envoy, Steve Witkoff, who I understand the Wall Street Journal erroneously reported that he was on this Signal chat on a personal device while in Moscow. That is absolutely false. Steve Witkoff did not have his personal device, nor did he have his government device with him. He was given a classified, protected server by the United States government, and he was very careful about his communications when he was in Russia. So rest assured to the American public, this administration is taking every precaution when it comes to protecting our national security. And that's why the American people reelected this president, because they know that our national security is in good hands with the President of the United States. Speaking of the Vice President, I understand he's going to be speaking any moment now. I would hate to counter-program the Vice President of the United States. You'll also hear from the President at 3 o'clock. He will be honoring Women's History at the Women's History Month celebration. We have a lot of great women across our cabinet who will be in attendance, so we'll see you all there. And then you'll also hear from the President again at 4 o'clock when he talks about tariffs. So plenty of time for more questions. Sorry it's a bit shorter today, guys. We'll see you later.
That was White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt with the latest press briefing to the media. Of course, still lots of talks about the Signal debacle. She mentioned it and talked about it in pretty good detail. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us. Now, let's get you back to the Charlie Kirk Show.
This has been a live special report. We now join our programming already in progress.
How did my child turn into this, brainwashed social justice warrior? Well, it's because you haven't engaged your children's minds when they were younger, and that's what Tuttle Twins is trying to do, to help parents engage their children with these ideas in a simplified, fun way, so that as they then go off to college or get on with their life, they've got a foundation of true principles to rest on.
And the popularity of it is growing right now. Everyone could check it out at TuttleTwins.com/Charlie. I'm going to buy a bunch of these for my kids. Finding good kids' books is very, very hard. In fact, we went to Barnes & Noble recently, and our daughter just loves buying all the books. And it's very funny. She has great instincts. She went up to one of the books, and it was like a homosexual couple, and she looked at it. She said, That's not right. And she put it back down. It was like kind of like, we want you to be gay or some. And this is a kid's book. I mean, again, everyone in the audience can have your own views of marriage. But for a kid to have to be forced upon, her intuition is amazing. And so talk about how you are incorporating these beautiful ideas, liberty, family-friendly, let's just say pornographic elements in a way that kids actually want to read it. This is not a textbook. This is not just giving them Milton Friedman's Capitalism and Freedom, but it is those ideas distilled in a digestible way for a child.
Well, I think you raise an interesting point with your personal story that children are being bombarded with these types of ideas now. And when we started doing the Tuttle Twins in 2014 is when we published our first book, we had a lot of conservatives and libertarians and others say, wait, let kids be kids. We don't need to talk to them about these big adult ideas. We can wait until they're getting close to voting age. And so we got pushback even from our own tribe for doing children's books talking about these big adult ideas. Of course, going through the crazy BLM and DEI and all the stuff that we have in the past few years, nobody on our side talks that way anymore because they see what the left is doing, that they have just this cacophony of content that they're pushing out, whether it's cartoons or books or online stuff. And so now I think increasingly parents recognize, whoa, my children's mind is like ground zero in an ideological battlefield. And if I don't give my child armor and weaponry and knowledge of the enemy, then my child will become a casualty. And so we live in a world where we can't just assume that we can talk to our kids later about these ideas. We need to engage them. Frankly, we need to compete for their hearts and minds because they're being, attracted and exposed by so many hostile ideas. Parents often have been caught in a trap because I'll tell you, Charlie, the biggest problem we run into is freedom-loving moms and dads who do want their kids to learn these ideas, but the parents, feel ill-equipped to explain and teach these ideas to their kids. They feel, the parents, increasingly that, well, I don't know how to talk to my kids about economics or history. I did bad at that subject in school, right? 20
We're interrupting this program for a special live report.
It's a busy day for the Trump administration. Vice President J.D. Vance speaking at Quantico right now. Let's listen in.
We are excited to celebrate the Marine Corps' 250th anniversary, 250 years of winning wars, 250 years of kicking ass and taking names. So here's the basic plan. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to invest in the Marine Corps and the entire United States military like we never have before. Over $1 trillion we're going to invest in building up the manufacturing base of this country so that you guys, when you do go to war, when you have to go to war, you've got the best weapons anywhere in the world. We know from the long history of the United States of America that while the leading edge of American power is you all, it really matters what you guys have in your hands and what you guys have on your backs when you go to war. And so I promised you, from the President of the United States, we are going to send you, if we have to send you to war, with the best equipment, the best ammunition, the best weapons, and we are going to empower you guys to win when you have to. That's the purpose of the United States Marine Corps. Am I right? So that's what we're going to do. And of course, I got some good news. Over the last few years, some of the military branches had some recruitment problems. Not the Marine Corps, actually. The Marine Corps was the one branch that consistently met its recruitment goals. And that probably has something to do with the fact that the Marine Corps is a little bit smaller, as you all know. But this year, now, we have got every single branch of the United States military for the past 2 months has been meeting its recruitment goals, because I think I see in your faces what we're seeing all across the country, a renewed sense of patriotism, a renewed commitment to excellence, and that is what is going to make the United States military the strongest fighting force anywhere in the world. So thank you all. Thank you for being part of it. Thank you for being part of 250 years of great American tradition. Thanks to you guys for being willing to put on the uniform and serve your country. I always say that the most important thing that we have in this country, the most valuable natural resource, we got plenty of oil, we got plenty of natural gas, we got great mines and minerals, but the most valuable resource that we have in the United States of America is you all. It's young people who are patriotic and dedicated, who are willing to put on the uniform of the United States and risk your lives to defend your fellow citizens. That's an amazing thing. I know it's easy to forget when you go about doing your jobs and you're just worried about getting through the day, worried about getting to the next week, worried about doing the good job that all of you do, that what you're doing is an amazing thing. And it's easy to forget that because, you don't always have the vice president dropping in to say thank you. But I want you to remember that whether you serve another couple years in the United States Marine Corps, whether you're at the beginning of a 20 or 30-year career, that we respect you, we thank you, and this vice president and the president of the United States know that you guys are the most important resource that we have in the United States Marine Corps, in the United States of America. So thank you all, and God bless you. And the final thing I want to say here is I was actually, and I know I was late. It's funny. That is not Marine Corps time, my friends. I remember Gunny Arledge always told me, if you're 5 minutes early or 10 minutes late. I'm sure you guys have heard that phrase. Well, what does it mean when the vice president is 2 hours late? I guess I'm on time, because who the hell is going to get me in trouble, right? But here's the thing, my friends, is I left. The reason I was a little bit late is because I was in the Oval Office talking to the president. And I stood up and I said, "Sir, I know we're in the middle of something, but the Marines at Quantico are waiting on me." And he said, "Oh, I didn't realize that. You got to get out of here. You got to get out there." And I said, "Do you have a message you want me to deliver?" And the President of the United States said he wanted me to tell you two things. First of all, that he loves you. And second of all, that he's proud of you. So let me echo the president. Let me echo a grateful nation. You guys just keep on doing what you're doing. We love you. We're proud of you. And we're going to support you every single step of the way. God bless you, Marines. Semper Fidelis.
Vice President J.D. Vance addressing the U.S. Marine Corps in Quantico, Virginia. You just heard the remarks there. All right, let's get you back to the Charlie Kirk Show now.
This has been a live special report. We now join our programming already in progress.
Red flag, they shut it down, they ban Netflix and unsubscribe in their home. I'm less worried about that because parents are more easily able to detect that. I'm more worried about what parents struggle to detect, and that's the sub-mediocre content in our textbooks used in classrooms across the country, K-12, that teach about government being the solution. And they do it in very subtle ways, right? They praise FDR and claim that he, saved the country from the Great Depression. They praise Woodrow Wilson and claim that the Federal Reserve helped, stabilize the economy and stop, massive swings in banking. These are things parents struggle to detect, and yet plant seeds to stay with these children and lead them down a path of supporting big government and ultimately Marxism. So what we're on guard for is not the big flashy stuff that, make lists like that and get parents wrinkled. We're on the hunt for and helping parents detect the problems that they're not otherwise perceiving.
Hold that thought there. Everyone, check out TotalTwins.com/Charlie. Have you ever seen your dog slowing down or having health issues and wonder, what can I do to make them better? Well, I want to tell you about Rough Greens. You can add it to your dog's food for 90 days, and you'll see changes that will amaze you, guaranteed. Invented by naturopathic Dr. Dennis Black, Rough Greens wants to invite you to give your puppy the Rough Greens 90-day challenge. In the first 30 days, you'll see shinier coats and increased energy. By day 60, your dog will have a stronger immune system, less shedding, and improved joint function, all due to the live nutrients you've added to their diet. Fetch a free Jumpstart trial bag for your dog today. Just go to roughgreens.com and use promo code KIRK. That is RUFFgreens.com, promo code Kirk, roughgreens.com, promo code Kirk. You don't have to change your dog's food to improve your dog's health. Just add a scoop of Rough Greens, roughgreens.com/Kirk. email me, freedom@charliekirk.com. We'll be right back.
Relentless in spirit. You're listening to The Charlie Kirk Show.
Okay, everybody, in just a second, we'll continue with the Tuttle Twins, a great series for your kids. Over 6 million copies sold. It's TuttleTwins.com/Charlie. But first, I want to remind you guys, our campus tour is underway, which resumes next week. We have some good campuses we'll be announcing very soon. I believe we have, boy, I'm trying to think here, 17 campus stops in the month of April. It's immense. There's 1 week where every single day I am on campus. I'm literally going from South Carolina, Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, every single day. That's what we have to do, by the way. We just can't allow AOC and Bernie Sanders to go have all the fun, to go draw all the crowds. We got to lean in. This is a full culture war blitzkrieg right now. It is time for us to make permanent. We have to claim what is ours, which is the next generation that is part of a right-wing revolution, and that is what Turning Point is doing every single day. Check out TuttleTwins.com/Charlie. I am going to go buy a huge bundle. I'm looking at some of these right now. It's phenomenal. Now, my daughter's 2 and my son is 10 months. I'm going to ask that question. Are there some products for the under 5-year-old demo? I'm sure there is. TuttleTwins.com/Charlie. Stay right there. Welcome back, everybody. Email us, freedom@charliekirk.com. This is how you know that there's some good stuff on the Tuttle Twins. They have one that is the Creature from Jekyll Island, which, of course, is all about the creation of the Federal Reserve. That would be a very good thing for a kid to read. Connor continues us. So let me ask, are there books also for toddlers, 2, 3, 4-year-olds?
Absolutely. We have board books for toddlers, such as the ABCs of Liberty or the 1, 2, 3s of the Bill of Rights. Indestructible books that your toddler can slobber on, and they'll still learn about freedom. We got books for teenagers as well, so we run the entire gamut, no matter the age of your child. And Charlie, this won't surprise you. When we've surveyed our audience, over 52% of parents tell us that they are learning new things for the first time, even though they got these books for their kids. We're educating entire families, and it's so critical because groups like yours are on college campus. We have to engage there. We've seen the closing of the American mind on these campuses. I contend that if we invest earlier and help families incubate these ideas even earlier, that helps, downstream solve so many other problems. And so families have struggled in the past to, how do I teach my kids about this stuff? How do I talk about it? I don't understand it very well. That's the problem we're trying to solve. Just read these fun books, talk about it together, and you'll be amazed at the aha moments that your kids will have.
So one of the books that we got about 6 months ago was a history book, allegedly. And it was a beautiful thing. It said, top moments in American history, monuments, I think it was all about. So, okay, what could possibly be wrong with monuments? We start reading this book, and there was an entire chapter illustrated of the Stonewall riots, which was a series of these spontaneous riots back in 1969, all about like the gay rights thing, page after page. And this is supposed to be a book to American monuments. Think of all the monuments that you could have for kids to learn. So you don't know that at this, you buy this monuments book, you don't know that. I start reading this stuff, and it is remarkable, the toxins. Look, the bottom line is this, is that there are dark forces that are trying to harm our kids, and you must be vigilant, and it can be very subtle. And going back to the Snow White theme, there's this book, And Tango Makes Three, is the true story of a same-sex penguin. I don't know how it could possibly be a true story. Last year, the Escambia County School Board paid a law firm at least $107,000 to defend its removal, and Tango Makes Three after a lawsuit was filed by its authors. Imagine a school board investing six figures to defend itself against common sense because it's inappropriate to bring agendas to children. So just more broadly, what is your vision for the Tuttle Twins? You've had great success. Where do you want to see this go next?
Well, again, books like that, Charlie, raise the flag, and we have focused attention on that is clearly a problematic book, the history book that you mentioned. Think of the history books that are used in schools across the country. We actually purchased all the popular ones. We did a study of them. And what you find is that they are all great at teaching American history to kids if the goal is to help them win Jeopardy in the future by being able to recite every little factoid and random tidbit. But they did a horrible job at actually teaching the ideas, the philosophy, the values that formed this country. So the history books that we've created have tried to solve for that by saying, yeah, we got to teach the what happened and the who did it. That's important. But the real context is the ideas that were, that people were struggling over. You ask about a vision for America. I think of the NAEP scores that came out about a year ago. This is the national assessment of how kids are learning in America. And they found that for the 8th graders, when they tested them on American history, only 13% of them were proficient in American history. That's 1-3, not 3-0, 13%. So then I ask you, Charlie, and our audience, what becomes of America if the future voters are so ignorant about our past? Those who don't learn from the past, of course, are condemned to repeat it. So my vision for our country is that we can empower families across the country to learn these ideas together, to give their children an intellectual, ideological, historical foundation of ideas so that as they go out into society and they're bombarded with all the garbage that's going to come upon them, whether that's from peers, social media, academia, or whatever, they're going to be able to withstand it. They're not going to be an impressionable, robot that just is assimilated into the Borg hive mind. They're going to have the capacity to think critically, to act independently. But we've got to put in the work. We can't assume best intentions of a system that's clearly been corrupted, where the curriculum has been dumbed down. Parents need help. They need a lifeline. Yes. They want to step in and they want to help their kids. That's what the Tuttle Twins is trying to be, is a resource for them to do exactly that.
TuttleTwins.com/Charlie. Thanks so much. Great work. We'll have you back on soon. Check it out. Thank you.
Thanks, Charlie.
That is TuttleTwins.com/Charlie. I'm buying some right now, and you should too. Email us, freedom@charliekirk.com. Subscribe to our podcast. I will be at Jack Hibbs Church tonight. Promises to be a great conversation. Talk to you guys soon.